Thank you guys for sticking it out for the afternoon sessions today. It is with great pleasure that I have to introduce to you Dr. Cudemus. He is a Harvard-trained cardiothoracic anesthesiologist who is triple board certified in anesthesia, critical care medicine, and echocardiography. For 10 years, Dr. Cudemus served in various leadership positions at Mass General Hospital, including serving as the Heart Center ECMO director. He is currently the medical director of the ECMO program at NCH, and his primary focus is elevating the patient care experience. He leads a team with the primary goal of providing the best and safest clinical care for patients undergoing complex cardiothoracic procedures and provides excellence in perioperative sedation, anesthesia, monitoring, and resuscitation. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Cudemus.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me again. Good afternoon. We're going to be talking about how to develop an ECMO program, and this this is a passion for me. I've been doing ECMO. I've been part of different ECMO teams all over the country over the past 15 years, and I hope you enjoy it. As a disclosure, so I'm a medical consultant for Medtronic and Admiral, and all the images that I'm going to be using here have been approved by the patients. I like to start always with this data from ELSO. As you guys know, the ELSO is the International Extracorporeal Life Support Organization. It's a lot of programs every year joining ELSO. And if we look at the numbers in January 2013, I was a junior attending, and the majority of the ECMOs were neonatals. As you guys know, the ECMO program for adults started to grow after the H1N1 pandemic. Just to give you an idea, when I was training at Mass General, the pediatric surgeons were putting the patients on ECMO. The data was not as good on adults, and the majority of the survival, the best survival, was on neonates and pediatrics. And over the years after the H1N1 pandemic and all that data, there was a lot of learning of things that we can do and offer now with better technology for adults. And as you continue to see the numbers here in 2016, the numbers continue to way up. And by October 2022, the vast majority of cases were adults. And nowadays, this is from April 2023, we continue to see a significant amount of programs putting patients on support for VA, VV, and for ECPR as well. So as we just shared, the majority, there is a good number of centers all over the world continue to offer this technology. Now we know that patients with severe cardiac shock or severe acute respiratory failure can be put on ECMO. We can stabilize them and figure out what to do next. Either the patients can be transferred to a transplant program, or we can work on their recovery. And we know now that we can safely transfer these patients all over the country. We used to go pick up patients in Puerto Rico and take them to Boston, and now we have the ability to send patients all over safely, thanks to a better technology, a better understanding. What are the key components when we think about opening a program? And I like this slide because it really summarizes the key topics. Number one, we need to have commitment from hospital administration. And you have to have the resources. I have right now 2 programs in South America trying to open an ECMO shop, and the passion is there. The nurses want to do it, the physicians want to do it, but it's not enough revenue for the institution. So that's been a challenge for South America in some of the areas. So hospital administration needs to be committed. We have to have the resources. You have to create inclusion and exclusion criteria based on data and based on outcomes. We have to have formal policies and procedures. We have to have an ECMO medical director, coordinators, and specialists, and develop a multidisciplinary team, because that's going to be the only way to really provide good outcomes for your patients. We have to also figure out that not all the shocks are cardiogenic shock, and we have to learn this, and we have different ways to evaluate that as clinicians. And once we look into cardiogenic shock, it's been multiple and different definitions for cardiogenic shock. Unfortunately, the mortality continues to be the same, and we have to start thinking differently if we want to help these patients. And how do we think differently? We need to start thinking about how to profile these patients sooner, and how to evaluate these patients better. And that's what the SKY came up with this definition of cardiogenic shock that is really good, because helps the clinicians and physicians at the bedside to think differently and to be able to take care of these patients sooner. There are different pathways now for contemporary shock, and also different algorithms to activate the cath lab and profile these patients in the cath lab. When we talk about especially VA ECMO, this is our algorithm for acute cardiogenic shock at NCH. And ideally is doing the profile in these patients and echoing these patients as soon as we can. And we don't want to wait for the heart to be barely moving to rush. We want to be able to get these patients profile sooner. And why is that? Because we just don't have a lot of transplants. And if we don't have a lot of transplants, we have to continue to be creative and learn more about ECMO and mechanical circulatory support. We talk a lot about ECMO and we talk a lot about MCS. For a quick review, when do we do ECMO? We do ECMO for severe acute respiratory failure, for severe heart failure, when we maximize medical therapy, right? And then basically, I used to tell my residents and fellows that the best ECMO is the one that you can avoid. It's like surgery. The best, that I always used to say, the best surgery is the surgery that you can avoid. If you cannot avoid this surgery, figure out how to profile these patients sooner. A quick review of VA ECMO. VA ECMO, we drain the blood from the venous system and we put it back on the arterial circulation, and we provide support for the heart and the lungs. Different techniques, especially for emergencies. The favorite and classic is VA FEM-FEM, when you drain the blood from the IVCRA junction and you return the blood to the femoral artery. We strongly recommend that every patient that goes on peripheral VA ECMO has at least a perfusor. And knock on wood, we haven't seen an amputation over 7 years because of the leg perfusion on this patient. They also, it's been described the VA jugular femur. Some places like it. I'm not a fan because you don't drain completely your heart, but it's definitely available when you drain from the jugular vein. For VV, we have to know, as we know, in order to be able to offer VV support to our patients, we have to have a good heart. And we're going to be getting blood either from the femoral vein and returning oxygenated to the IJ, or we can do FEM-FEM. We used to do a lot of FEM-FEM VV for acute lung injury post double lung transplantation. Works actually quite good, especially for support just for a couple of days, that sometimes these lungs require some support. Or if where you think you require just a little bit of extra support and you already have lines on the neck and the patient is crashing, FEM-FEM is an option for VV ECMO. So why do we want to offer VA ECMO? Where first can be done quickly and at the bedside. You don't, even though the best place to put these patients on ECMO is the cath lab because you have fluoro, is not required. We just placed 10 days ago, a patient was on VT storm, a patient on VA ECMO at the bedside. If you have a transesophageal echo, you can see the wires in your heart and then the descending aorta, and you can safely put these patients on. I heard in the past multiple clinicians or physicians saying, "Oh, we just cannulate patients in the cath lab." Yeah, it's ideal because you have more toys, but we can cannulate patients everywhere in the hospital, and nowadays even on different. If you're in Paris, they can cannulate you in a train station. But it's just to show you guys how much the growth on adult ECMO has been happening in the past couple of years. The indications continues to change, and as we get more comfortable with VA and VV, we have more and more indications for VA and VV. But basically, for VA ECMO, is any refractory cardiac shock with low cardiac output, with low cardiac index, with higher lactate, unstable arrhythmias. And the contraindications continues to be pretty much straightforward. If you have a patient with a head bleed, if you have a patient bleeding or exsanguinating, you can do it. And if you have a patient with moderate AI, moderate to severe AI peripheral VA ECMO, is going to be a challenge to decompress our heart. I know you guys talk a little bit about post-cardiotomy, cardiogenic shock, but it's important also to know that we continue to have more and more data to support the use of MCS post-shock. We have up to 50% survival after a year of these patients, and even though it's a challenging problem because the vast majority of the patients that come into cardiac surgery, they come for electives. We have to know that the sooner we put these patients on ECMO, the better they're going to be doing. Instead of keeping these patients on high doses of suppressors and seeing how they do over the night, and we'll make a decision tomorrow. If we on echo see this, we don't need to have an echo, but if you see this massive RV, you know that patient is not going to tolerate the closing the chest and being on a bunch of inotropes. So early recognition of these patients is going to be the key. And also using your tools. I strongly believe that one company is not better than the other. We can combine all this technology to help our patients. And we have a lot of good data to support the ECPella. They use the VA ECMO with Impella to decompress this heart. So the idea is to use all the technology that we have available to be able to help our patients. Other options on ECMO, if we think that these patients are going to be requiring support for longer time, we can think about BiVADs, and we can divide the cannulation strategy, and then we can decompress the right ventricle from an RA to PA cannulation, and then LV to aorta. We can add an oxygenator. The beauty about these configurations is that we can close the chest, and the patients can be extubated and awake and mobilizing. The beauty about the ECMO these days is the ability to wake up these patients sooner and work on physical therapy while these organs recover. And when we think about how to open an ECMO program, always the main question is who's going to be there? Who's going to be there at the bedside? Who's going to be on call for us? What's a perfect model? And they always ask, well, what do you think is the perfect model? And the perfect one is going to depend on each institution. Some models are going to work with perfusionists at the bedside. Some models are going to be better with RT ECMO specialist or RN ECMO specialist. It's just going to depend of your institution and how busy is your program. I used to I used to share that all the residents and fellows used to call me and say, Dr. Cudemus, call me for the next ECMO, but from 7 to 5. And I cannot come in the middle of the night, and I cannot come on a weekend. So, it's challenging to, once you are going to think about offering this technology, who's going to be help and who's going to be on call. And the key is to formalize an ECMO team. There continues to be a good amount of data showing that having these patients with a formalized multidisciplinary MCS ECMO team definitely going to improve outcomes and decrease complications. And why is that? Because we have to take care to a lot of things. I used to tell my fellows that putting the patient on ECMO is like doing a central line on steroids. That's easy. Anyone can put cannulas. You have vascular surgeons, trauma surgeons, cardiac surgeons, intensivists, anesthesiologists putting cannulas. The challenge is who's going to take care of these patients after. And that's the key part of a good and a solid ECMO program. Having the ability to have and set up goals and expectations for your patients and your team. Knowing the risk of having the patient on ECMO, deal with the pulsatility and thinking about weaning these patients. Complications and how to deal with the complications. Where are you going to put your A-lines? So all those things are very important when you're looking into growing a program. Is not only having the ability to have the right personnel at bedside, but also to recognize the complications. And how do we do this? With a lot of education and training, formalizing a way to educate this your team. Either way, having a program with expertise that can help you grow your needs, or bringing physicians and clinicians with ECMO expertise to your program. And why is that? Because we have a lot of different tools. We have a lot of different toys these days that we can use, and each of these toys have pros and cons. And we were just talking not too long about the Protect versus the Arpella versus the Impellas versus going on full ECMO, and having the ability to recognize that is important. On VV ECMO, we want to have mobility, so putting the cannulas on the groin is not ideal anymore. We want to wake up these patients. We're going to get these patients moving, and that's the beauty about pumps like the Crescent, that you can definitely help get the patients out of bed and mobilizing, and you give the patients time, and having the ability to use this type of equipment and technology, either the Crescent like I shared before, or a patient like this one in Protect Duo, gives you the ability to wake the patients up, work on nutrition, work on mobility, and wait for these patients to get better. We used to say, well, we put the patient for a week on ECMO, then a month, and then we had patients even onto a year on ECMO waiting to see either for recovery or for transplant. Protocols is very important. Figure out a way that you formalize protocols for your team. Protocols and checklists are ideal. You can use the ones at the beginning from ELSO, but working on a group and using institution to develop your own protocols for consensus of data is quite helpful. Standards. When are we going to transfuse? How are we going to wean? What are we going to use for anticoagulation? I switched all my anticoagulation for Bible almost, I think, 7 years ago, when we had the national shortage of heparin, and it's been impressive to see no more minimal head bleed or GI bleed or any other bleeds when you put the patients on Bible. So that's been a plus to a lot of programs, and now we continue to see more and more data showing the use and the benefit of Bible or ergotamine over heparin for either VA or VV. What cannulas are you going to use? How are you going to cannulate? How are you going to teach your residents and fellows to do so is important. How are you going to have your car? You used to have this car on the ECMO car, a big bag that that would allow the circulator to help us at 2 in the morning. So we didn't have the luxury to have a cardiac circulator in the middle of the night. So with this, we have the bag with all the equipment with numbers. So based on the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is where we're going to be able to need to put the patients on ECMO when we were cannulating in the middle of the night. So making your life easier. These are small steps that you can do with your team to make things easier to cannulate at the bedside. Before you move, you want to make sure that you secure these cannulas and you know where the cannulas are, because transport can be, as you guys know, a big problem with these patients. And working on equipment. What's going to be the equipment? What are you going to use? We have a lot of different pumps and a lot of different cannulas, oxygenators, and we have the beauty to use them and get familiar with them. The same thing for transport. And AI has been amazing. Now, this technology that gives you the ability to really know what's the inlet saturation, the outlet saturation, and it's just phenomenal to see the growth on mechanical support and ECMO in the past couple of years, and we'll continue to do so. And we have better cannulas, we have better equipment, we have more flexible cannulas to help these patients. At the same time, as we grow an ECMO program, we have to know your limitations. At least for us at NCH, we continue to grow an ECMO program, but we're not a transplant program. So know when you can be able to recognize, okay, I've done enough. I can send this patient safely to a transplant program for the next step. So if you're going to be opening an ECMO program, perhaps with bigger programs or transplant programs or durable LVAD programs that can help you and support you. And that's important. And also, the next step is program evaluation. You got to make sure that you're doing a good job. And the only way to be able to do that is to monitor your program, doing different meetings, either M&M or ECMO quarterly meetings that we talk about the data, we talk about the education, we talk about management, things that can we do better. Because we don't want the patients, all the patients of ECMO to die. That's not the idea. We used to hear that, and my former chairs at Mass General, they hated adult ECMO because they were working with oxygenators from the 70s and 80s and 90s. So that the way that we need to see this is like the cell phone. The cell phone from the 90s are different to the cell phones that we're using right now. And I like to share this case every time I have the opportunity. This was a 62-year-old man that came with a massive STEMI at 11 p.m. He had chest pain all day, but he decided to continue to work. And when he got home, he was pale, diaphoretic, after a big fight with his wife because he didn't want to call 911. She called 911. The blood pressure was 60/40. A half hour after he coded, my team got activated at 2 in the morning, and we put him on ECMO, peripheral VA ECMO. Took us 10 days. He woke up 10 days after. He was also a diabetic, and we transitioned him after 10 days on ECMO to BiVADs with an oxygenator. And the first picture that you see is on your right side is him starting to walk after a month. And then we continue to work really hard on his recovery. And this guy was going and walking around, getting better every day all over Mass General. So we used to get the calls, hey, this patient is like cafeteria with blood coming out of the tubings. What are you guys doing? So we had to add a lot of permission. But after 6 months on ECMO, he got a kidney transplant. So things can be done. And the excitement is to be able to bring this expertise to other centers, to other places, to guarantee you that with the right equipment and the right team, you can really help with these patients. And it's all about education. The best way that you're going to get your nurses engaged and your RTs engaged is on rounds. Daily rounds, we go through a lot of different topics, and we really work on the team for them to get to answer all their questions. We work with industry to help us share the newest equipment for them. And that's the key. We just one patient at a time working on the education. And I like to finish with the same key components, because knowing this is gonna really help the next step when we think about opening a shop. We need to have the administration support. We need to have the commitment for clinicians and physicians, and we need to develop our own criteria. We have to learn how to say no when they call us to these patients on multi-organ failure that they're dying. The ECMO is not going to help them, and we have to figure out a way to use data to show outcomes. And we just have to be the bad police, but say no. I mean, this is too late, and work with your residents, or your fellows, your clinicians to teach them how to recognize these patients sooner. So in conclusion, and just to finish, we can develop ECMO programs. It can be done, and can be done fast if we follow the right path, and have to be a component of commitment at creating a multidisciplinary team. What's the best team at the bedside is gonna be based on your team, and each hospital is different. Here we can share 2 patients walking, one on VV ECMO and one on Vivat's Impella 5 and VV ECMO with an oxygenator. So this on the last year and a half, the Rooney Heart Institute and NCH, we've been growing exponentially, the mechanical circulatory support program and the ECMO program, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you very much for having us.